That's a great segue into the next question I was going to ask is how does a Christ follower know who to vote for? I remember hearing a phrase, a few elections ago, doesn't matter who you vote for, just as long as you're voting for God's man. And now, if you can't use that phrase today, or if you can't, you can, but I don't know, so. What's some wisdom there? How does a Christian know who to vote for, or does it matter, or what are we looking at here?
Yeah. Trey, you definitely have the most voting experience.
Oh man,
that's an age joke, guys.
Ouch. Yeah, I have voted for a long time, Kurt. I think, how do you make any decision as a believer?
Yeah,
I hope with prayer and supplication.
Yeah,
hopefully. Right. So, and you don't do it blindly. Mm-hmm. Like if you're walking,
look at what they believe.
Yeah, if you're walking into the voting booth, and you just go any, mini, miny, mo. First of all, I'd commend you for voting, but I would.
Is that even really a vote?
I would exhort you to why did you not go and study first? Right? In today's digital world, you can get you can find out what policies these guys stand for, ladies.
You can go to their websites, not the fake stuff. Go to their
right.
websites. Look at their stuff.
I would say don't watch network news and some of the cable channels. Don't let that drive your research. You can watch it if you want to, maybe for entertainment purposes or to make your blood pressure go up. But I mean, really do the research. Mm-hmm. You have it available to you. Do the research. Talk about it with your other Christian friends. Debate it. I mean, this country is built on healthy debate, although that's a harder thing to do these days.
Yeah.
But if you're with believers, say, who are you voting for? What are you thinking about? I think
be willing to have that conversation. Yeah. I feel like voting is such a private thing. It's like,
it's
who'd you vote for? It's like asking if. Never mind.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
And growing up, my parents were like, we don't talk about who we vote for,
Yeah.
But I think it's something the church has to talk about.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't necessarily talk about it from the pulpit other than what does God's word say about it.
Yeah.
But with other believers, I mean, we should share your research with me. What'd you find out?
Right.
What do you know? Well, let me give you the opposing opinion.
You said something really interesting, and I don't know if many people know this about the church, but maybe you can elaborate on it a little bit, Trey. We're not allowed to lobby for a candidate, right? Is that correct? As a 501c3, is that how that works?
As a nonprofit organization, part of the rules to continue having a nonprofit organization is that you can't publicly support a candidate.
Yeah.
And people get a little miffed at us sometimes because they want to put just local election signs maybe at the end of the driveway, and we're like, look, we have to be impartial as the church to the candidates because of our nonprofit status and faith-based organization. But that doesn't mean, we have people in our church community who hold public office. We're obviously for some of those people.
It's just a weird line that we have to be careful
of. As an organizational stance or
whatever. I thought that was really interesting that people may not know that about 501c3 and may have questions about why isn't the church standing up for this candidate or this person
and some churches do it
regardless.
I would just, it's a word of caution to me to those churches. I just think it's dangerous to do so.
So if I can speak in a little bit just from my perspective on this one, I just always try to remember this, and I think it just helps to bring it to a human level on these things as we look at these politicians.
Talk about how to vote and then what that how to approach
as we look at these politicians, right? These candidates that we have every 4 years or whatever election it is. You're gonna vote for a sinful person, right? Yeah. It's never not happened. You're gonna vote for somebody who is a sinful, fallen human being. Because I've heard people kind of make arguments like, I'm not voting for that person because they've done this, this, and this. Well, you could say things about the other candidate always. There's always going to be things. So that's kind of one.
There's always some type of
this is going to be true. And two, like you said, about being blind in our voting and even in our allegiance to a party or a side or whatever. Man, I was actually, this is fun. I read Proverbs 14:15 this morning. It said it's prudent to take care in how you step, like basically take care of your steps. He was just saying, think about what you're doing, right? Proverbs 14:15. Just think about what you're doing. So it just got me thinking again, man, like when it comes to politics, obviously we don't follow any human being blindly, right? God didn't even, by the way, ask us to follow him blindly, Like, we are rational human beings. He
Yeah.
calls us, Jesus said, count the cost, right? Even of following him. And we should. And we look at him and he's perfect. And so for any human being to follow them blindly it's foolish. It's foolishness. I don't care who you vote for. So do your research. Look at this. Now, for me, I'm going to probably look at the candidate that I think, one, if they do line up pretty well with God's word and his law, then that's probably who I'll vote for. If they don't, which a lot of times they probably don't, you're going to look at other things. Some people are single issue voters. Some people are going to look at a little bit more. I think what it comes down to for me would be if I know that one of the candidates either way, as a Christian, is going to give us as the church a little bit better footing to be the church in this country the way that we should be freely, then I might vote for that one. That's just kind of where I might land on that. If I know both of these are not great choices even necessarily any given election, if I know, okay, this candidate's probably going to hurt the church and this candidate might not, then I might go for that candidate. I guess that's where I might fall.
It's just part of thinking critically and trying to view things through the lens of Scripture, and
it's always difficult.
Yeah, it's never easy.
And a reminder here is that there are devout believers in every political party
On both sides.
right? Yeah, every
Isn't that
party
interesting
has.
to think about? I think we forget that sometimes.
Yeah, there's not one party that's the Christian party.
Yeah,
Like there are Christians in all of the parties.
That, like being on both sides of that, most Democrats and Republicans that I know agree on a lot of things. They agree on basic principles of things. They disagree on how to accomplish them for the most part. But two, I always try to remind myself again, because I'm a human being, and just like any candidate is, because I'm a human being, I'm wrong about at least one thing that I currently believe.
I would guess more than that, but that's
Probably
fine.
a lot more than that, right? But I am at least wrong about one thing, because we get so caught up in this stuff like, oh, I know everything that I know, and I know it, everything politically. But because you're not God, you're wrong about at least one thing that you believe. And so at least I think that in and of itself opens a door to conversation. To go, how do you see that? How do you see that? So,
well, Trey, I think kind of what you said earlier, I can't remember what you said about the sides, a Christian side or whatever, but it kind of segues into what our next question is going to be. And again, just to everyone who's on YouTube and Facebook, thank you so much for your comments. And if you have a question, feel free to let us know, and we'll field it as best we can. A couple of interesting comments. Gene said, look at the fruit of the politician, which is kind of along the lines of what we've been talking about. Aldo, he said, remember, Jesus isn't coming back to take sides. He's coming back to take over. He's coming back to take us back.
That's on a coffee mug somewhere.
Yeah.
Aldo.
Yeah,
I love it, man.
That's funny.
bumper sticker theology.
So anyway, but
True, though.
kind of going into the next question I have for us is, how does a Christ follower deal with this division that we see in our country between liberalism and conservatism? Are we supposed to choose a side? Is one side more Christian than the other? And I think you alluded to the fact that there's Christians on both sides.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with that, especially in this culture where, first of all, if you disagree with me, it's like the equivalent of you saying you hate me. We kind of live in that culture.
Right.
And then secondly, especially with politics and conservatism and liberalism, far left, far right, it can be heated and people can go at each other's throats. So how do we as Christians deal with that? How do we be the peacemakers? Is one side more Christian than the other when it comes to liberalism or conservatism? I know it's kind of a slew of questions. So, but you look like you're about to say something, Trey, so go.
I think, so let's just talk about our context, right? So we're in our area, in our demographic, maybe a large majority of our congregation might say Republicans are God-fearers. They want what's best for the country. Democrats are not, and they, want to raise taxes and give money away.
Blanket statements.
Okay. Yeah, I don't believe any of that to be true, by the way. So the Democratic Party, and you mentioned it even Sunday, the liberalism is the Democratic Party right now. A lot of their policies are for people, right? They want to help the poor, the marginalized.
Yeah.
They want to, you can't say that's bad.
Right.
Yeah.
You might say the way in which they might want to do it, you might not agree with that. But the reason I think the Democratic Party leans heavily into let's help the poor and the marginalized, let's raise taxes so we can create better equity and all that, is because the church isn't doing it. Right?
That's so interesting. So you think that's one of the reasons why they lean so far that way?
Because some organization with a lot of power and authority needed to help these people because the
Someone's
church
got
wasn't
to.
doing it.
Yeah.
The Christians weren't helping, weren't loving their
Right.
neighbor. They weren't taking care of the poor. They weren't doing everything that's mentioned in Matthew 25.
Yeah.
And therefore, somebody stepped in and said, well, we've got to do something to help these people. And it became a government.
And then the way
political
they
entity.
do it, people might not like or whatever.
Yeah.
But
So the flip side, you could look at the Republican Party
Yeah.
and say, well, there's good, honest people in there. They're doing their best. And, they're for businesses and they're for, maybe not quite as many laws and restrictions and things like that. I mean, all of that, why does that come about? Because maybe the church isn't reaching out to those people. Why does the church not help small businesses, right? Why does the church not? So I would point back to the church needs to have a revival in itself to say,
How can we truly impact our community?
yeah, do what Jesus said to do, have more influence than the political parties, and you'll make a better impact in your community.
So what would you say if the church would that open the church up or a church to political criticism? And I mean, that question may not even make sense, but like, would that open a church up to receiving criticism of taking a side politically, or why are you helping this person but not that person? Does that make sense? Would that open a church up to that? And if so, how do we deal with that? And maybe that's not even the right. Maybe that's not even the right question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we're at a place in our country right now.
it is our God-given privilege and right to be leaders and to be in our society, right? Again, showing proper respect to everyone, fearing God, honoring the King. I mean, I think all of that, where Peter, in the whole context of that passage before that, he's saying, do good, like let the good that you're doing be known. Jesus calls us to be salt and to be light, right? And as you asked the question about the liberalism versus conservatism and how can we make peace, Paul says, Philippians 4, verse maybe 3, he says, let your reasonableness be made known to everyone, right? The idea that we would be people who would be known for being able to sit down and have conversations and work things out and talk
Calmly,
about things.
be the voice of reason.
Yeah. See needs and meet them. I know, I mean, you can bring up, and I've heard people bring up arguments about, socialism and things like that. And well, the church was a socialistic thing in the book of Acts, and
Had
shouldn't we
everything in
be
common.
like that? And they're right as far as the church acted in a way that was freely giving, right? Freely meeting the needs, like you said, where maybe this party arose in our country that had to because the church stopped doing that, stopped meeting needs where they were meant to be met. You asked, could there be criticism? Yeah, sure. I mean, you can be criticized about anything, but I think if we, the church, are taking our God-given right and privilege and calling and commission to go into the world, make disciples, do good, be salt and light, serve the poor, look out for orphans and widows, do all the things that we're supposed to be doing, then yeah, maybe we don't have to kind of lean on the politics of any particular side.
Kind of just breaks down those
accomplish
parts,
those
like
things.
the barriers, and it also breaks down like the delineations between those parties.
Yeah.
If we're all united to do that same thing. So one of the best ways as a Christ follower to be a peacemaker and to deal with this tension is just that, be a peacemaker, to be active and be the voice of reason, be willing to sit down and have a calm conversation with someone.
Can I read you some passage? I read this
go for it,
Sunday.
man.
I just wanted to read it again because I think it's such it hits the heart of this for me, of liberalism and conservatism, because I think both are in this paragraph. Paul, Romans 12:9, he says, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. That's probably a little bit more of your conservatism type thing. I'm hating what is evil, I'm clinging to what is good, that holding on to things. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. But here comes some liberalism. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. So Then he even goes into blessing people who persecute you and things like that, like loving your enemies. What a world transforming thought that is.
How
And-
liberal it is to give your love away to someone who hates you.
Right, exactly. It is crazy when we actually read the Bible and see how God speaks into these things. And I think if we just maybe strip the labels off of things.
Yeah,
right? I'm
I mean,
conservative.
that's
I'm
such-
liberal. Again, if I'm following
Yeah.
one or the other blindly, I'm probably being a fool in some way. But then just to say, man, if it's good, I'm going to hold to it. I'm going to cling to it. In everything that God lays out for us as what is good and just and right and pure and lovely and commendable and all those things, I'm going to think about them. I'm going to hold on to them. And whatever I can give away of myself and my life to share with those in need, I'm going to do that. And, consequences be what they are. I'm going to lay down my life for the good of my brother and for the glory of God. I think if we would just do that as the church,
That'd be the Christian party.
that'd be the Christian party right there.
Wow. You got my vote.
Never will I be campaigning
Do,
for
do your research, Hunter. Do it on your own.
Yeah.
I was about to say, you guys are really convicting me coming up to this November to actually sit down and actually look at everything.
Oh, and can I say this real quick to young people? Like if you're of voting age, man, go vote like Trey said. I do think, man, I don't know. Has trends been going up with younger people? Do you know that? I don't really know.
I'm not sure.
But I would love to see like 18-year-olds at Hut, man, go out and vote because, like you said, go do your research. Don't just I mean this respectfully, parents. Don't just listen to your parents. Don't just listen to any person. Just go do your research, look it up, think about it, pray about it, seek the Lord, and go make a decision. We get that privilege in this country. It's a great thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I just got a couple questions left for us, and if you're watching on Facebook and you want to sneak a question in there, feel free to just let us know if you have a comment or a question that you'd like us to address. We'll do our best to field that. We are kind of drawing near to the end of our time, so just a couple more questions. So how do Christians deal with the separation of church and state? That's a big deal, in our Constitution and just the founding principles of this country is that concept of separation of church and state. What does that look like? How do we deal with that? And what is the relationship between the church and the state? Because it's also interesting, we are registered as a 501c3, which is a governmental structure, a way of taxation. So it's an interesting relationship there, even though there's supposed to be separation. How do we approach that concept of church and state, the separation of?
Well, all right. So the reason that language exists, the separation of church and state, I think is a Jeffersonian idea, Thomas Jefferson. And so founding father type language. And it was in response to, as Kurt was even talking about, theocracies. All right. So when the British government, they told you what religion you had to be. And so when America is now revolting against that and starting their own thing, one of them, I know
They're standing up against their
they're right. They
governmental
protested
authorities.
and then in starting their own country, determined that they didn't want the government to ever determine what religion you must be. And I think we still would want that today. We want that separation. Because if it were to be a different religion that is not Christian, and then we were persecuted and suppressed, we would not want to live in that country. So it is a beautiful thing, the separation of church and state.
Right.
People probably misuse that statement a lot. And then even, I think whenever the government says a church or a religious person can't do something, it's when that right is infringed on.
Right.
Like, so if I wanted to, as a student in school, if I wanted to pray, it should not be a problem. Now, should all of my class pray together? That's slippery slope, right? Because if my school, if the government was a Muslim country, it ran by a Muslim country, I don't think I would want to go to that class and pray to Allah. So I get that I wouldn't want all of my teachers saying, all right, we're all going to pray to Jesus now and assume that. But I do want to have the right to do that,
Right.
to read my Bible at school, to pray at school over a meal or whatever.
Yeah. To freely be able to do it.
Yeah.
Now, I have another question that's kind of unscripted. I didn't prep you guys on this at all, but, as we talk about, the authorities telling the church what to do, what are your thoughts or observations as we've watched over the last, 5 or 6 months with the coronavirus and there being a lot of guidelines and I don't even know what the best word is. It's not an order necessarily, but like, hey, we want you to adhere to these practices when it comes to health and safety. And, you know, it is a big deal for saying for a government to say you can't meet, 50 plus people or whatever the number has been. It's always changing. What have your observations been having watched that, and thinking about this concept of church and state and the separation of it? I know it's kind of a touchy water.
So the state has an obligation, at least to its people, to have a safe environment, a safe community. And if the Department of Health and these people determine that, in the pandemic, when things were too volatile and we didn't know what we were dealing with, to ask organizations, even churches, to do something different, right? Can you shut down and do something online, or can you continue having your Bible studies in some kind of safe way? I'm not sure it's an overreach, but as things have changed, as we've learned more, like in California, right? So Pastor John MacArthur is battling this right now. California has not opened up to mega churches yet, the larger gatherings, but John MacArthur says, I still want to meet. He and his elders have decided they still want to meet. And so they had to go a court injunction. They had to talk about, why it was okay for them to meet. That's a state-owned thing. And in the state of Georgia, we're free to do that to some degree right now. There are recommendations. So the CDC gives us guidelines. Those are not laws.
Right.
Those are guidelines. And as you've seen, we've been relaxing some of the protocol, but we're following what the number one thing is. Wear a mask. Nothing political about it, right? We're not making the mask a political statement. Wearing a mask is not a political statement. We're just trying to be good citizens, right? Be good community members. So in the whole church and state conversation in the pandemic that we've been in, it's been about being a good citizen. Can our church show the love of Christ and be a good citizen? And that means we'll
adhering as best we can.
As best we can. If they ask us to shut down, we will for a moment. We won't do it forever, right? Like, because we have to weigh those.
Speaking of 1 Peter 2:17, show proper respect to everyone, whether they're wearing a mask or not. Show proper respect to everyone. I did want to say about the church and the state thing, just maybe kind of a little bit back to what we were talking about with, we should count that a blessing, I think, for us as the church, that, the government, by and large, we have the freedom to worship freely and not be regulated by the government, and that is a good thing. And again, I think it does go back to us remembering exactly what Paul says in Philippians 3:20. Our citizenship is in heaven, right? That is our primary citizenship. That's our primary identity. And so if we are looking to the government to fix any of our problems in the world, or and certainly government has its role, yes, but as the church, if we're looking to our government to kind of fix all those things rather than us taking responsibility as the people in the world who are put here and gathered here and called by God to go and be salt and light to the world, then man, we're just missing it. And I think that's going to keep us sitting back on our heels and sitting in our chairs just going, well, I hope the government fixes something, or I hope some other organization fixes something, when I think God has given us everything that we need to look at and to know and to have wisdom to go and be who He's called us to be in the world and make a difference in every way that we can make a difference. And maybe it just starts with, I'm going to love my neighbor, right? And I'm going to serve them and the people that live around me and the church that I go to and the community that I live in. And then if we get the opportunity to step up and take stances and help out on bigger issues, we'll do that too if we can. And if we can help, right? Anyway, I just think a lot of times as Christians we do, and I'm speaking to myself, I mean, I know we all have this mindset sometimes of like, somebody else will fix that.
Yeah.
When, man, Christianity is, faith is an active thing, right? Faith is an action. It's not a, let me just sit here until I go to heaven. It's bring the kingdom in, like part of the Lord's Prayer, let your kingdom come. It's building that kingdom. So that we can bring more citizens in, right? And like we want everybody to be a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. So anyway, I think a little bit more action would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely what I've been hearing from, some of the comments is we feel like we've been just dropping the ball, as the church. So Chris Queen chimed in. He said initially the individual colonies established their own state-sanctioned churches too, which was a thorny issue. So kind of a little bit of a historical comment there as well. So we have one question left, and this one actually I wanted to kind of direct it to Trey. Trey, you may have missed it if you were listening in with the audio issues, but Trey is a member of the Board of Education here in Newton County, and that's considered a political position.
As public servant.
Yeah, public servant. And so the question really is, Trey, can you speak to the challenges of what it's like to be a Christian who holds a governmental position, a political position? How can we sympathize better for those who are Christians in political positions?
Oh, sympathy. I'd love some sympathy. That sounds great.
You have my sympathy. I cannot
You can
empathize.
sympathize by actually sympathizing.
Right.
Just do that.
Okay, so maybe a couple of points. First of all, in our type of government, we're representative government. So I represent a group of people, and that's District 1 in Newton County. So the east side, south side, over even all the west side too. So I have if you were looking at the diamond of Newton County, I would call it the diaper. I get the diaper. I'm like from east to west. It's just this it outlines the lower part of the southern part of the county. But I'm a representative. Now, who am I first a representative of? I'm a representative of Christ first. I'm a Christian ambassador. But now I have to represent a group of people. So the tension would be if the people in my district wanted me to represent them in a way that was not representative of Christ, that's where I would probably have to go, I can't represent you anymore. Because it would clash with, for me, the first kingdom, the kingdom of Christ,
right,
where the truth lies in the Word. And so anytime society gets to that point where if I'm still representing this district and they're like, hey, we want this and we want that, or you need to represent us this way, and it goes against those Christian ideals, then I would have to step down. So representative is one. As long as we see eye to eye on what that is, that's good. I haven't come across a situation yet. Now, my district's not all, one makeup. It's several different political parties.
Sure.
So there's still a tension of you have to represent the majority of your district, but that's a lot of conversation with people who don't think like I think.
Yeah.
So when they bring ideas and thoughts, and we have good debate, and we try to convince one another of whatever position is we are, and then I have to say I have to represent the majority of the district.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's a great opportunity for what we were talking about, being the peacemaker and the voice of reason, and
think about how difficult that is the bigger the scale gets.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
So now if you're the governor, now you have to represent all of Georgia. You have to make decisions representing all of Georgia, not just your political party.
Yeah.
You have to think about what's going to be best for all of Georgians. Think of now you're the president of the United States. You have to think about not just your party. You have to think about the entirety of the country and the way that they think and believe. I think that's how a representative government works. And if you're a Christian leader in that, your pledge is first to your allegiance is to God and His kingdom. Then you pledge to the flag and the nation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Trey, I know we're all glad that you are serving from that mindset, from having that kingdom first mindset. And it may not be fun all the time, but I know you love being there and working with the people. And so we're thankful that you're in that position and doing it from a Christ-centered perspective. So,
well, I need as many prayer warriors that would join me, because it's difficult. In any situation, it's not a political position. How do you live out your Christ life? How do you live a Christ-like life in every situation that you're in your work, in school?
Yeah,
it's really not different, right? Other than I'm representing a group of people. Yeah. I'm one representing many. Mm-hmm. You still have to make those decisions in your little tribe of people that you hang out with. You're kind of a representative of those people.
Yeah.
So think about that when you go to act and do and say and post. Am I representing Christ? Or am I representing this group of people that maybe are a few steps from Christ?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, as we wrap up this conversation, I just want to thank you so much for coming in and being willing to talk about these really touchy topics, controversial topics. And, when it comes to politics, when it comes to, government and everything like that, I just want to remind everyone that the church is for the glory of God, which means we are for people, which means we are for our leaders. We're going to pray for them. We're going to do our best to serve them. We're going to stand up and, represent the kingdom of heaven. And whenever those two things clash, we're always going to err on the side of the kingdom of heaven. But in between all of that, we're going to be peacemakers. We're going to have the voice of reason based on the truth. And so any other last kind of comments for everyone listening?
Let me go first, and then you answer.
Okay, go.
Mine will be quick. I think you'll
You're good. Go.
tie the spiritual knot on everything. No politician, no political party will save you.
Yes.
Your allegiance should be first and foremost to God, His kingdom, and His word. All this other stuff is temporal. We're only here but for a vapor, and we're gone.
Yeah.
So to focus on earthly comforts and political parties to try to get something the way I want it to be, I would just check our motive on that and say, is this eternal? And if it's not eternal, focus on what's eternal first, and then work on, whatever your societal issues are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Bring us home, Kurt.
I was just going to say, I guess for all of us to remember, there's a big difference between knowledge and this thing we call wisdom. And when it comes to politics and making political choices and whatever, voting, all of that, I think wisdom is something that a lot of us lack sometimes in our pursuit of justice and in our pursuit of picking the right candidate or whatever, where we want the knowledge, but maybe we miss out on the wisdom. And what I mean by that is just simply, when I say wisdom, I mean I think the definition to me of wisdom is Proverbs 3, verse 5, that we would trust in the Lord with all our hearts, lean not on our own understanding, but in all of our ways acknowledge Him, and He'll make our path straight. Right? Straight, not left or right. Straight. And just listening to the Lord. I would challenge every believer, honestly, between now and November, read the book of Proverbs. If you read it through once, read it again, and let God's wisdom genuinely transform your heart and your mind, to think about things the way He leads us to think about things. I think there's a lot to that. We can know all the facts, but as we seek God's wisdom in making those decisions, it's important. It's a big decision, right? To cast a vote, great privilege, do it, but do it with wisdom. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Kurt. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for leaving the comments and the thoughts. And I just want to say thank you to Jacob Fry, the man behind the camera, the man who has saved the audio a couple of times. Big shout out to him. Thank you for setting all this up, Jacob. We love you, appreciate you. And we're continuing this series. This Sunday, we're going to talk about abortion and just kind of hear some perspective and biblical truth on that, and just really dive into it. And then next week for the Q&A, we're going to have a special guest with us, one of the ladies in our community who runs a pregnancy center, Refuge, I believe it's called. And so we hope you join us for that as we talk about that.
I know, man, if that's something, if that's a hard topic for you, if you're watching and that's a hard topic, let me just say this. I think you'll be very encouraged.
Yeah.
Very encouraged, and it'll be good for you. Good for all of us. So
yeah.
Don't be afraid to tune in, or come and join us for church on Sunday and tune in next week.
Yeah. So Sunday morning, 9:30, whether you're live in person or online, and then also just online at 11. And then again here Tuesday night at 8 p.m. as we dive into another one of these really difficult topics and hear the wisdom from our pastors. And so we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. See you Sunday.
Thanks, guys.